So if I do a bit of a roll call, so actually no, I don't need to. I just need to go to my people thing to show the. So we have Gary, we've got John, Sally, Robin, and Martin. So we've got Tony and Murray, and I presume, and
Murray here.
Great. Tony, Murray, and we've got Gary and Terry.
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, awesome. So it sounds like everybody's here. There being no apologies. We have no public forum. Are there any items not on the agenda? There being none. Are there any conflicts of interest to declare? There being none. Minutes for confirmation. Can I have a mover of the minutes for confirmation, please?
John.
Sally for a seconder.
Thank you. So that was John, Sally. Anybody want to raise any issues as a result of the minutes of the meeting? There being none. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Aye. Against? Carried. Okay, we're on to 3.1, which is the shoreline management plans, and staff have worked very hard on this. So I'll just move to the resolution, which is the receives the shoreline management plans, SMPs, coastal panel expressions of interest in terms of reference report, approves the draft coast panel EOI form and TOR, and resolves that the coastal panel EOI form is widely publicised, including provision for those less able to access online content, which is a really good thing. And so do I have a move? That was Robin, is it?
Sally.
Sally, right. Sally moved. Do I have a seconder?
John.
John. Now, is there anyone want to raise any issues, any discussion?
Yeah, I've just got a couple of questions. Who's going to talk to it, Sandra?
Who's going to
talk to the shoreline management plan?
Hi there, Amon here. Happy to answer questions if you've got some, Terry.
I was just interested around the nomination forms for the panels.
Yep.
So obviously you've got a bit of a plan for these to come out. So how will they? What's the next steps for them going forward? Do people step up, or do we shoulder tap some people? How does it work in terms of nominating the public?
Well, the key next thing is advertised. So advertisements will go out in the paper and various means. But there is a really good opportunity to shoulder tap as well. So a combination, I'd suggest. And if councillors or community board members do know of people suitable, it is a good idea to do some shoulder tapping.
And can I just ask that when those forms come into you, what's the process after that to pick the team?
So the forms will be gathered and reviewed by the Strategic Advisory Group. So that's the group that sits above the panel and below council, and then that group will summarise and make recommendations to council, but council will decide on the final makeup.
Okay, thanks for that. That's good.
Oh, I have a follow-on question from that, Amon. Because on page 19, it talks about that process and nominations received, blah blah blah, and then it says the SAG will also undertake to invite additional participants where necessary to ensure panels retain appropriate balance. Can you just expand on that?
Yeah, I suppose it's a bit of a backup plan if we find we're not getting the right balance and we need to do some shoulder tapping ourselves, then right. that gives us that option.
Okay, so it's potentially there'll be people who will apply who will be turned away, even if the full allocation of people applying hasn't met. If there are a few people applying, then can be on there. Not necessarily everybody's going to get on. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And if it's very one-sided or it's a particular group that's overly representative, we might not
Right.
have all of those people on board. We'll seek to get a bit of a balance.
Yep.
Are there any other
I don't envy that task.
Are there any other questions?
Yes, Sandra, I have a question,
Yes.
which I have in that dialogue box. Eamon, my question is the map and the 4 areas. I appreciate that those are not circles, but those areas are indicative of the 4 areas. All I want to do is, for Mercury Bay, this has the sign off from Ngāti Hei. In terms of, because I'm very mindful that the treaty settlement in that office, there's a very definitive map showing what is Ngāti Hei's, and like that, that's not in question. That is that document that defines Ngāti Hei's territory. So I just want to make sure that what you have got there as Mercury Bay, Joe's happy with.
Yes, Joe's happy with, and they've put forward nominations to be on the SAG already, so that's positive. It is worth noting that the boundaries don't match up perfectly with the iwi boundaries, but thus far that has been working okay. People are most interested in Mercury Bay or Thames Coast, but there will be challenges with that.
And can I just add to that, Tony, that consultation and working with iwi is ongoing and will be, there's a particular emphasis there.
I only raise it because the map from the treaty settlement, that is now in concrete. What is defined as Ngāti Hei on that is Ngāti Hei. So it's imperative that anywhere on that document, which I'm sure you've got, is there. If you haven't, I'll get you a copy. But so I just don't want to have any later on finding out that we missed something because we chose to look at something different than what's come out of the treaty office.
Good point. Thank you, Tony. And I'm sure I'm going to take that on board and double check those boundaries. Any other questions for Eamon? There being none, thank you very much, Eamon. Really appreciate it.
Sorry, I think we've got, I've put in the chat that I had a question. I think Sally's got one as well.
Oh, sorry.
Mine was just a quick question around the membership. So it talks about the coastal panels consisting of members, observers, etc. And it says community board representatives 2, and then observers, TCDC councillors. So presumably, if you're a community board member and a councillor, then you can only be an observer on that panel, not a member.
Sorry, Eamon.
That's page 15, 19, 24.
That's correct, Martin. That's correct.
Yes,
Okay.
that's right. So TCDC councillors and WRC can be observers, but it's intended that the community board, other community board members are the members.
Okay, thank you.
Sally, did you have a question?
My question was similar to Tony's around our relationship with Ngāti Tamatara, Ngāti Maru, etc. So it was answered that how crucial that is, and those ongoing relationship is key.
And I've had a talk to David Typer about that as well, and I'm sure Eamon, you had something to add to that.
Yep, quite good engagement from various iwi, particularly the Thames Coast and Mercury Bay. So another meeting with Leanne and Paul Majuri tomorrow to try and finalise some of that SAG membership.
Cool.
So there is ongoing dialogue. It's been a bit stalled given current situations, but there is dialogue going on there.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Sally. Are there any other questions? There being none, somebody might need to put their microphone on mute with the kids in the background. Can I thank you very much, Amon. I'll now put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Against? Carried. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Amon. Appreciate it. We're now moving into 2.2, which is the 2020-2021 dog feed deliberations. And that is on. Do you want me to give you pages for these things? 36, I've only for hard copy. So I'm not sure of the page for soft copy. But do I have a mover for the resolution?
John, happy to move it.
John, thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Murray here. I'm happy to second it.
Thank you, Murray. Are there any questions or discussions?
Yeah, just one quick one if I can raise is I see it's just been fast tracked and I can see the results from the feedback that's pretty well, there's not much of a concern about it across the board. So it's all about just trying to hit those dates for August for the registration. Is that the understanding?
Yeah, it's for the 1st of July is when dog fees are due each year. So it's to give our customers enough notice, so, approximately a month or 4 weeks notice of that. And then late fees can come in from 1st of August. That's where the 1st of August date comes in.
Right. So the fees increased. There was not much feedback on that. There was very little feedback. Was that true?
Well, there were 56 submitters, and 15 of them were in support of a user pays, and 28 were against any increases. So that's equating to about 43 and about 7 others. So there were various things in the submissions, but not all just focused on dog control fees. So does that answer your question?
Well, it wasn't all focused on dog control, but I just wondered if, in light of the situation today, the rise of fees was suitable. That's all.
It's quite clear that a number actually supported that it go back to the full cost of delivery of the service and controlling dogs. However, I think that people would be astounded about what that full cost would actually be. I think we probably need to put it together for the public so they can quite see what the ongoing full cost of dog control fees, dog control as a service actually is. But if your question's been answered, Terry.
Yeah, my question's been answered, but I just like that visibility. That was what I was after.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Kate?
I've got my comments, Sandra, which I've got in the dialogue box. You've raised that for me, there were people who said that this is user pays. I'm not clear what the full cost of looking after dogs is versus what we collect, because for me, this is clearly something to me that a non-dog owner shouldn't be necessarily propping up. So irrespective of, most people will submit from a personal perspective, and no one wants to pay more for anything. But if the cost of looking after dogs is $400 a dog, then I don't think the balance of $300 should be picked up necessarily by the community at large. So I think what you suggested, it'd be very useful to say let the public know what is the true cost of managing dogs and other things maybe, and what do we collect, because we're going to have to take some hard decisions come LTP plan about who pays for what, and I sit firmly in the user pays camp.
Yeah, that's definitely in the long-term plan area, and so it can be taken into consideration as we develop that.
Okay,
just should signal it now so people know that whilst you only pay this much money now, the true cost is. We need that sort of information out there, because that'll come in for a lot more discussion, I assure you.
Yeah, some of that links into our revenue and financing policy and the level of funding that we receive or that we set, what's appropriate. Yeah. Are
there any other questions of Kate? There be none. Thank you very much, Kate. Really appreciate
right.
that. We've still got the next resolution, but we'll put this
Yep.
first one. So there being no more questions or discussions, I'll put the resolutions. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Against, carried. Thank you. Okay, we're going to the next one, which is 2.3, the 2020-2021 dog fees adoption report. And do I have
I'll
a move?
it.
Move, Sally. Do I have a seconder?
Murray.
Murray. This is fairly straightforward. So are there any questions of Kate in regard to this? There being none, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Against? No one against, so the item is carried. Thank you very much, Kate. Appreciate it.
Okay.
2.4, which is the indoor alerting device IAD report. My personal view is I'd quite like to defer this for a year and have a little bit more work done on it, but I'm going to let some discussion or questions run before you make a decision. So are there any questions of who's leading this one?
Well, can I? Oh, Sandra, it's Tony here.
Yep.
For me, this is clearly an item that should be a national initiative because we run the danger of every territorial authority going out and getting their own report done. And I know we approved it, but it's a lot of money. And for me, it should be a standard across New Zealand, and it shouldn't be something that territorial authorities do on their own. So I'd be of a mind to say, here goes an example of some work, and it all looks pretty good. Send that to central government so they've actually got the backbone of a report, and get them to do this. And it should be then enshrined into the building code so that there's one standard and one piece of a kit and one way of doing things across the board, and not the debacle we even have now in our own district where we have 5 different sets of alarms that some go and some don't go. And if you're in a house that complies with the building code, you can't hear it anyhow because you're double glazed. So I agree it should go on hold, but further, I believe that any further money should be done at the national level.
Can I speak?
Yes, Sally, go.
There is a national standard, and staff, correct me if I'm wrong, there is a national standard and there is an expectation that we meet that standard. We're already out of line of that, and both at a regional and a national level, we've had a very clear message that we need to move forward. And you know, we can wish the government to do all kinds of things. However, to me, if you're not going to progress with the business case to make the final decision, will you leave both the council and yourselves exposed? We have a legal responsibility to have a safe alert device, and at this point in time, we're one of the main outliers. So if the decision around the table is to delay, well, then you're going to have a very good reason for that, and you're going to have to assess both the council's risk and your individual risk.
Appreciate that, Sally. Are there any other comments?
Murray here. Yeah, Sandra, I know we approved this in 2017. To me, technology has moved a long way since then. I've read these reports. I read the quarter-year report, the first one, which gave the outdoor results, which said the outdoor results may be screwed because of the way that they were done. I read the second quarter-year report, which said that they had the indoor positioning. And to me, this is accomplishing nothing more than what the civil defence one over the mobile phones is doing, which the government is trying. So I think the whole thing, be it from a central government or from us, is a bit of a mess at the moment. I don't want to see this proceed at the moment. I think technology's gone a long way. I think we're doing something on our own, which we needn't do on our own. There's a lot of other local authorities in the same way. I'm quite happy to park it and see what central government comes up, because I think the phone system will be far, far better than what we're going to do here. I don't think this actually accomplishes what we set out to do, and that I look at a lot of outlying areas and the radio stations are not getting there, and I just don't think it cuts the mustard at the moment, having I read those reports thoroughly.
Yes, Sandra, it's Gary here. Can I make a comment?
Yes, Gary.
What Gary Walker said, we're getting overwhelmed with the information. We got 744 pages, and he said, well, we've just had 500 and something pages we've dealt with, and I think the head of governance came back and said, don't worry, you've got reports that are written that will assist you. Now, what the point I raise is the report that's written here says on page 44, and about the middle, that the attachments relating to Cordia said, in fact, they did have advice that would cover alert between 80 and 90% of the populated areas compared to the current 40% of the siren network. If you go to page 245 of the report, I think it's 245 of Cordia's report, I'm sorry to tell you that information we've given is not correct. It says 245. In summary, the report shows that the IAD, Alert Radio, does work indoors for a number of locations measured, though it may be possible that potentially 80% of the overall population on the peninsula can receive the IAD services indoor. There is insufficient information or measurement provided in the report to conclude with suitable degree of confidence that the 80% estimate is valid or can be achieved, or how reliable the service would be. Now, I am very concerned because we have to rely on reports. Either that report that was written is incompetent or is deceiving us deliberately. And that, to me, causes me grave concern. We get given huge amounts of paper, so that we're told rely on the report. That report is completely wrong on that aspect. And I'm terribly concerned that we're being fed this sort of report, and I'm astounded.
Okay, so any further comment for anybody?
Well, I've got a comment if I can, and I'm just listening to the others and hearing the story, and also understanding Sally's point of view. But I agree with what Gary's saying. That does speak with forked tongue a little bit. We talk about the trial on page 217 of 95 locations, and only 29 of them weren't even getting the signal, and this was a trial.
No,
So,
that's not true.
95 locations, 69 were adequate signal, and 29 didn't get it. So what I'm just saying is that Tauranga is pulled out of this deal.
No, well, can I just tell you, Tauranga pulled out because they opted to fix their sirens.
Yeah, so we're being left on our own here, and we're developing something that maybe the telcos will put more signal towers around and look at coverage. So we do need to consider this, but I'm also of the opinion that we should defer it for a year in light of what's going on.
Shelley?
Well, is Alan or Rob is Gary or Rob online? Because there's been some fairly serious comments made, and yeah.
It's Gary. It's Gary Gottlieb. Are you talking about Gary?
No, I'm talking about Gary Taylor or Rob Williams.
That report which deceived us, and that's
no, Gary. Please don't talk like that. Please don't talk like that. You've got to have more respect for the information until you can clarify what the information is actually. You know, we don't talk like that about these things online or in a forum, because but you need to have a bit of respect for it.
Don't we have accountability?
You can question the information, absolutely, but do it in a respectful way.
Have we got staff to talk to this report?
Gary, is Gary Taylor on board?
Yes, I am on board. Can you hear me?
Look, So if anybody has a question now, then please put their question to Gary.
Can we use the surname as well, so we're very clear about who's,
Towler.
oh, yeah.
So it's Martin here. I'm the only Martin, so I'm not going to use my surname. So I just had a couple of queries. While reading through that report, I believe that the device will cover more area than the sirens do. I'm a little bit sceptical around this sort of 83 or 87% that they're talking about. And it kind of dismisses the fact that some of the areas that can't get it are remote with small populations. It actually mentions the Tauranga Valley, and that's like 5 minutes from Thames. So it's a concern that also they did the measurement for the Tauranga Valley at the dock headquarters, which you basically can't get TV or radio signals up there. So I'm a little bit concerned that in that report, it doesn't say anything about what we're going to do for these areas that don't have coverage. And I wouldn't like to see us then maybe having to chip in with the radio stations to try to put additional radio aerials or things in. But I'm also aware that, yeah, I mean, we could wait around forever for for central government to come up with something across the whole country. But I don't think this is a one size fits all. I think these things are going to be a combination of sirens, some sort of IAD type thing, whether it's this one or something else, mobile alert systems, and in some areas, telephone trees. I don't think this is a silver bullet, but I agree with Sally that, yeah, this is something that we could get pinged for. And if we're just putting it off for a year, I don't think that's reflecting well on us and our commitment to the safety of our community. So actually, that wasn't really a question; it was more a statement.
No, so I'm going to get back to what I said at the beginning. Look, I think there are too many concerns raised by a number of you, and this is why I suggested at the beginning that we defer it for the year. I think we're quite able to do that, and taking into consideration the concerns that Sally raises, we would be far more prudent to do a little bit more work on this, potentially workshop it amongst the councillors so that we're all very aware and put all the issues that we each have on the table, so that we can progress it in some way or another and make an absolute decision about how we're going to go forward on this. But I think there are too many concerns and questions around what's being proposed. I don't want to ditch it because we need to do something. So I think we should just defer it for 1 year, and during that period, put our minds to doing a bit more work around it collectively. So if everybody's of that mind, we'll move on with that unless people want to raise any other issues.
You move
Worship,
it,
it's Gary. May I speak?
Sorry, who's that?
It's Gary Towler here. Can I speak?
Yes, Gary.
Okay, thanks for your comments, everybody. I just want to put a little bit of perspective in here, and this report, we just gave you everything that we had available. We didn't hold anything back. We delivered everything we had. It is a bit clunky in places, and that's part of what development is all about. But I just need to clarify a couple of things. So firstly, nationally, it has been made very clear to us that the government are working on their cell alerting device development project, and they will not be investing in regional or local TLA initiatives, but they are fully supportive of what TCDC is doing regarding an infill option, which this is, and we have a number of infill options available to us, and they're very interested in supporting us non-financially because of our terrain and because of the complexities that are around the cell network not working in particular parts of the Coromandel. The siren network is fading. We do have an option. We do have an obligation to do something, and we must do something. I think to sit back and do nothing is possibly not in the best interests under the CDM Act. Going into a business case, I believe, is possibly what you could be referring to by default, Your Worship, in that if we can spend some time, some considerable time, maybe up to a year, getting a substantial business case and quantifying and qualifying a number of the things that are in the reports and getting some more peer reviews done, and possibly workshopping it as part of that business case, I think that's worthy. But to do nothing and just defer it, as a staff member, I recommend we don't go down that path.
So what was the cost of developing the business case?
I don't know, Your Worship. We haven't got there yet. But once again, with COVID and everything else, everything's shut down. I cannot put a figure on it. But what I recommend in my resolution is that the Group Manager of Finance and the CE be the gatekeepers of developing the costs around a consultant to help us.
Gary, have you got any documentation?
Can I just...
Rob, I'll take you, Rob.
I'll just comment on that. I'm not prepared to ask my councillors to take a vote on an unquantified amount of money. So what I would request at this point in time is that we actually defer this paper until we can actually get in a room together to discuss this.
Yes.
I'm fully confident that we are trying to do the right thing here. I'm confident that we are working with an existing product that works around the world but doesn't necessarily work in the Coromandel, and that is the work that we've been putting in, is to try and test that it does work in our terrain. We have information that suggests it will work in our terrain, but again, we need to know what the cost of developing a business case would be before we can recommend you approving going to a business case stage. So let's defer this for a couple of months. Let's do the work in behind what it would cost to develop a business case, and then we will bring it back to council.
Yes, it's Gary here again. I was going to ask Gary Towler that do you have documentation from the government to back up what you've just been saying about them supporting it?
It's Gary here. I have possibly got emails and I can get confirmation from ministry representatives that we are working with that they support it. Yes.
Okay,
at the last emergency management committee meeting, we had regional representation from Julian Snowball and our national advisor who works out of the Auckland office.
Boring.
And they were there and interested in this work and emphasising its importance. Yeah. So that's the level of government interaction that I've had.
Okay, thank you, Sally, and thank you, Gary. So we'll look at the resolution. The first resolution is receive the indoor alerting device IAD report, and the second one is to approve the project to preparation of business case. So I think we'll go.
Can I just move that we defer this until either the June or July meeting, and
so we'll remove the first one, which is receive the report, and then we have Sally wishes to move that we defer this until the June-July meeting. I'd probably suggest July. And potentially we may be able to discuss this further and have something more in prep ready for July. So if everybody's happy with that.
Yeah, happy with that.
Your Worship, I just think we need to get it to a workshop and flesh it out, because I think there's a lot of questions the elected members want to ask. I just question in the situation we're in where July's too early, whether we just leave it open, but we say we want a workshop ASAP to flesh out and ask all the questions of everyone, what our responsibilities are, ask questions of Gary Towler of where it is, ask why other local authorities are not doing the same, ask what's happening in the cellular network, the whole lot, because I think there's a myriad of questions.
Yeah, well, that's right. And so hence why I suggested that we do that in the first instance. But I think June's too soon. July, that will give people a chance to have something further. Excuse me, we may just have some time to have a further discussion after the June meeting, which I'm expecting we'll all be in the room together, except that we do have deliberations, decisions around the annual plan. So we may defer all of this until July and then have that workshop discussion and progress it from there.
Yep, I agree with Murray. I think we need to really sit down and have all the issues on the table before we're presented with another agenda item, because that's not going to work. Yeah,
that's right. Okay, so is everybody happy with that? Sally, you prepared to move those two resolutions?
Yeah, I think the second one's fairly untidy. I think the first one is fine. We receive the report and we defer until our post workshop or something. Keep it simple.
Yeah, I agree.
I think we defer the matter for the July, a report back in July to the council, and the report back can be whatever action we're taking in regard to it. So we leave that open. Report back in July.
I think that's going to raise people. I think that we're only, my reading of the room is that we're only at a workshop situation as yet. So,
but if we haven't had that's right. But if we haven't had the workshop before July, then July will be informing us of when the workshop is.
Oh, okay.
So it's a matter of just giving us a bit of an update about where it's at. So we're deferring it in the interim.
Yeah, I think Sally's onto it. Just refer it to a workshop, and it may be in July, may not be. I think the workshop is important. July's may not happen then.
So in July, we'll either be having a workshop or we'll be having an update about when the workshop will be.
Okay, I'll be pushing for the workshop.
Okay.
Agreed.
Can I just make another comment? So in the interim, like, the question I want to know is, why is this not being a national-led project? I don't have clarity around that, because someone else has just said, other people are doing different things. For me, this whole thing is the same whether you're in Stewart Island or the Three Kings Island. So it should be consistent, and it should be managed one way with only one answer. Having a whole lot of people going off and doing their own thing, to me, I don't understand. So the question I will have even at the workshop is, why are we alone on this, and why is it not? If it's okay for central government to tell us what might happen if we don't do something, this is clearly, for me, a central government responsibility. They tell us what we're going to do and how we're going to do it and how we're going to fund it, and we'll get on with it. But right now, there's 70 people all running around, all squandering money to try and get the best outcome. It doesn't make sense to me.
Am I being...
I just had one comment. Sorry, I was wanting to chip in earlier, but I thought, hello, yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Sorry, I was offline there.
No. I wanted to chip in earlier with this. I wanted to chip in earlier, but I had technical difficulty. Sorry. So I live 3 kilometres out of the Thames CBD. I don't hear the radio, the siren when it goes off because of the wind direction. If it's absolutely still and slow and southerly, I hear it. And I don't get the mobile alarm from the government, even though I have a modern smartphone. So when I read in here that this was an inbuilt device.
Excuse me, Robin.
Yes, Sandra. Yes.
We've got the resolutions, so we don't want to debate this now or discuss it now. That'll be for the workshop.
Okay, well then Tony and I can both be quiet.
So I understood that everybody was happy with the with receiving the report and Sally's recommendation of deferring for a workshop, which hopefully would be in July. So is everybody comfortable with that?
Yes.
Right. Well,
Yes.
Robin, are you happy
Yes.
with that?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then all of those discussions that everybody wants to bring to the table can be had then. So Sally, are you moving that?
Yes.
I'll second it.
Seconded, Terry. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Sorry, I was offline there for a bit. So we're now moving on to 3.1, the Waikato Local Authority Shared Services Draft Statement of Intent and Half-Yearly Report. Do I have a mover?
I will move. Tony.
That was Tony. And do I have a seconder?
I will second.
Okay, so we'll have some discussion. Is there someone speaking to this?
I'm here if you want to ask any questions, Sandra.
Right, yeah, thank you, Rob. Are there any questions of Rob in regard to this?
Sorry,
Rob,
We're on 3.1, Waikato Lass.
I got a couple of questions.
Terry.
So, Rob, just reading the report, and it talks about some of the things that they're aspiring to do, like the key points on page 263 of structural transition required as part of a company's transformation. Point 2, 5 initiative priority projects to investigate. Then point 3, 10 other projects and initiatives that are progressing. But I just really couldn't see any detail in there of actually what they're doing, and yet they're seeking another $1 million or so. So the question to you is, what are the benefits coming back to TCDC from the group, apart from the fact that it's a great way to combine thoughts and ideas? They don't seem to be actually achieving much. They've got a lot of aspiration, but not a lot of achievement. Can you help me here?
Yep, there was a document produced which is on the website for the last, it was produced in 2018 that shows where the successes have been achieved. The LAS operates in 3 different areas. The first one is in combined procurement, so it's regional procurement. So the insurance agreements that we've reached over the last decade with the LAS, where we procured insurance regionally, has been the best probably joint procurement in that space that we've achieved. And I would say that that has saved millions of dollars over the last decade. So where we were able to do that, and that started in about 2010 or possibly before, where we started as a region to do that joint procurement exercise. In about 20, and again, I haven't got the exact dates, but following the success of LASs in general, the all of government contract scheme was extended to the local authorities where it previously wasn't available to them. So not only have we got the LAS procurement, we've also now got access to all of government contracts, which does result in significant savings back to local authorities. I haven't actually got the exact figures on me in relation to that, but joint procurement from a regional perspective makes sense where it's possible, and it does achieve significant savings. Obviously, when it's joint procurement, it's a one-off, because once you've made the saving, it sort of doesn't continue. It's just a saving is in terms of that upfront contract. The second area where LAS works together is where working together achieves a slight elevation of the bar for either no extra cost or a slight elevation in cost. And that the best example I can give of that would be the Waikato Technical Accord for the roading. So we called that RATA, the Regional Alliance Technical Accord, where that basically, in response to government's endeavours to amalgamate the roading portfolio across local government, in the Waikato, we got together because we realised, even though we all use the same database in the roading space, we were all populating the database with different information. So you could never compare one local authority with another in terms of the information that we collected, but also the way we made our decisions in terms of our asset management. So the RATA exercise brought the region together under one roof, where we had advanced asset management practices in place, and we were able to undertake the purchasing of the investigation contracts, such as the road condition assessments or the traffic surveys, and those sorts of things were able to be regionalised in terms of how we procured those contracts, and then how we were able to analyse and make recommendations to the member local authorities in terms of how how we can improve our roading networks for the best cost. So that the improvement of our asset management across the region was significantly improved when we went into the RATA agreement. The third area where we operate in the LAS is one where we do research and development. Now, the research and development has up until now been a reasonably cost neutral exercise, because we have endeavoured to work together as a community of staff to come up with ideas as to how can we work together to cut costs, elevate the bar, or make things better for the region. So it's a research and development activity that, if we funded it in our own environment, if we as a local authority tried to undertake an exercise to find out how we could improve our building cluster, for example, our own building services, it would cost us a significant amount of money, and we probably wouldn't bother doing it. So the idea of LAS is that we combine our resource. So, for example, for our $10,000 and for all the other local authorities, $10,000 pooled into one resource, we're able to analyse whether we can make the benefits or we can make the change. And the biggest project on the books for this coming 12 months is whether we can regionalise the building activity, all of that stuff that we do in our building teams, i.e. from building consents, the assessment of those building consents, the site investigations, the site inspections. Can we do that better across the region? Because one of the biggest criticisms we get in our region and across New Zealand is that every local authority does it differently, and we as customers require a more standardized and more consistent approach, because as developers and as builders, we're working in many different areas. So the primary investigation for this year is basically focusing on, can we actually make the improvements that our customers want in the building space? And also the added benefit to that is, if we can achieve something in the building sector, it gives a more powerful voice from the region to say it's not just the building teams that have problems here, it's actually that it's an industry-wide problem, that we don't get the quality of consent applications that we require. What is Wellington going to do about it? Because local authorities always seem to be at the brunt end of the problem in the building industry, but actually the building industry is made up of architects, designers, suppliers, builders, all of that, the rest of the industry that actually doesn't come under the same level of scrutiny as local authorities do.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Can I continue? I got one more question.
Yeah, go, Terry.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. I just got more out of that information you told me than I did out of the report, because again, if I go to the highlights during the last 6 months on page 90, of those 6 points raised there, the one you brought up, the building consent, shared services, etc., is the one that you've spoken about and makes sense. But the other ones are like a transformation project, a water share service, which Waikato District's pulled out of, a coordinated L&D program, regulatory services supporting tracking legislation and regulation, and human resources shared services. So they're all good things, but I just want to know, where are the cost savings for us? What is coming back to the Thames-Coromandel District Council, the benefits? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, no, and same here. And I've got to say, in preparation for this report, I thought we had a report from LAS with regards to exactly that, the savings per local authority. I have struggled to find that piece of information other than the report that was produced in 2018. So what the LAS is currently on with doing now is to provide a more definitive description of where those savings come from, or how much we've got back for our investment. So again, I would say that the insurance savings we had, I asked the question, I haven't got the answer, but the savings that we got out of the insurance, particularly in 2016, when basically everybody's policies in local government exploded, the savings we've realised from that have more than paid for the costs we've put into LAS at the present time. However, my recommendation, because of this business transformation exercise that we're going through at the moment, my recommendation is that the LAS, and I mentioned this at the last LTP exercise that we did with regards to LAS, is this is the last final 2 years where if LAS cannot prove that it can get a major collaboration across the line in terms of making savings and providing that consistency from a regional perspective, that we should not continue with less, because in terms of bulk procurement, we can achieve that as chief executives. We don't need a company such as LAS to actually undertake a bulk purchasing type of deal. However, it's actually trying to create the service delivery functions across the region that LAS is really the best vehicle for. So I would say that we're now in the final sort of 18 months to a year of LAS to prove that it can get one of these across the line. And if it can't, then we should not be continuing with a LAS.
Thank you.
Sandra, can I just speak, please?
Yes, John.
Thanks, Sandra. Rob, I wasn't aware of LAS until this report came out, and it was quite interesting reading it. And I understand the concept about collaboration and getting the best deal and what have you. But I was struggling. My biggest question was the cost to us and the savings. So that definitely needs clarification before I really want to support this too much. And the other thing was I could see it growing and taking on more and more. It talks about human resources and other bits and pieces they're looking at. So I just have a bit of a worry. It could be could turn into a rather large white elephant. But I'm all for the savings if we can achieve them. But I'd love to see the cost and savings outlined to us as councillors before we go spending too much money.
Are there any other
look,
questions?
I'm on the same page as with you, John.
Any other comments or questions of Rob? I hear somebody trying to come in.
It's scary here. I'm just, as Rob said, you know, the cost, we are in a situation where we've got costs are foremost in our minds, and I just simply raise that as reinforce what he said there. It's a worrying time. Thank you.
So, are there any other comments? Are you still happy with the resolution? The mover and the seconder? Sally, you seconded that.
Yes.
Murray, I think. Right. Okay, then we'll continue. And my only suggestion is that we write and request that there be a yearly report for our specific council, each specific council, on the benefits to them and savings to them, because I think we're only interested in the savings. That would be something that should have been provided by them anyway with their report. It would have been my expectation. So I'll just put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Okay. Carried. Thank you, everybody.
So, Sandra, can I just ask, seeing that request for costs and savings, are we going to ask that now outside that resolution that we can have a paper on that? Just want clarity.
We can certainly ask for that clarity from them on the savings from
Well, I would like ask Chief Executive to get a paper on clarifying that for us, please.
Yep.
I'd like that.
Yep. I've already asked for it, and I'm happy to supply it when I get it.
Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
Can Rob come in?
Yes, Rob said he'll supply us a paper when he gets one.
I said I've already asked for one from the LAS, and I will supply it when I get it.
Awesome. Thank you. Much appreciate that. Murray, you happy with that?
Yep, I'm happy with that.
Okay, thank you. Right, we're now moving on to 3.2, New Zealand Local Government Funding Agency's draft statement of intent and half-yearly report. Do I have a mover?
I'm happy to move this way.
Good on you. Thank you, Terry. Martin, seconded. Any discussions or questions of Rob?
They've had a very successful year. They've got good money, lots of money. Well done to them.
Any queries or questions for Rob?
Through your worship, it's Donna here. I'd just like to Oh,
Sorry, Donna.
hi everyone. I would just like to let people know just roughly what's been happening over the last month with LGFA. So about a month ago, they went out for a tender, and it was kind of at the very beginning of the lockdown, and it wasn't very successful. But since then, within a month's time, they've had an absolutely remarkable turnaround. They're almost back now, they are back now to pre-COVID levels with their borrowing and their yields. A lot of it was a result of the government actively buying LGFA bonds. And so they've done that to stimulate the economy as well and to have that money available. So what's happened from that is international borrowers have seen that, they've got a level of comfort in it, and they've come back. And so things are all back to a really good result again in a relatively short period of time, which is actually a really remarkable turnaround.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Quick question,
Yes.
if I can, Donna. It's I know that we've borrowed quite a bit of money through them. Do we have any bonds ourselves? Have we purchased any bonds in the past?
So the way that LGFA works is that we're all shareholders of LGFA, and so yes, we do purchase as part of every time we borrow. We also purchase what they call borrower notes, and so what happens is it's a percentage of our borrowing, and those borrower notes sit there, and then when we repay that loan, we then get those borrower notes back with the interest on as well. So it's kind of a way that works to offset some of our interest costs. It's all part of the cost of borrowing included in that.
Okay, thank you. That's great. Thank you.
Martin, you had a question? Martin?
Yeah, no, hi, sorry. Yep, it was just also a question just around that profitability, but I think Donna's answered it, just sort of wondering what happens to those profits that they make, but they come back to the shareholders.
They do.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other further questions of Donna? I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Donna. And so I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Against, carried. Now put 3.3, which is the funding agency amendments. Do I have a mover for that?
I will move.
That was Terry. Seconder?
Tony.
Tony. Are there any questions of Donna on this one? There being none, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
Have we got a seconder?
Sorry, yes, we did. It was Tony. Tony seconded it. So,
No, Tony moved.
sorry, I thought Terry moved it and Tony seconded it.
I'll second it. I'll second it.
Thank you, Terry. Sorry.
Through your worship, just before we carry on, we do need to authorise 2 of council's elected members to execute the deeds to get this document signed.
Okay, so
I'm happy to come down and do that if that's at the council offices, Martin.
And myself, I suppose.
That would be great. Thank you.
And it'll be out for me.
What was that? Oh, do
It'll
we
be
need to
like-
formalise that? Do we
it'll be
need to
nice trip
formalise
out.
that, Donna?
Yes, I think it'd be a good idea too.
Okay, and that the 2 council elected members to execute the following deeds for the local government funding agency be the Mayor and Councillor Martin Rudley. So, do I have a mover for that?
Tony, I'll move.
Do I have
I'll
a seconder?
I'll second.
Terry, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you very much, everyone. Donna, is that everything there?
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Good on you. Thank you for all your work. So now we're into 3.4, which is the budget revision. report. So could I have a mover for that?
Tony, I'll move.
Do I have a second? Thank you, Tony. Do I have a seconder?
John.
I'll say,
Can I just, are we moving, we received the report?
Yes, and it was seconded by John, and adopts the March 2020 budget revision.
Are we going to adopt it before we ask questions? That's my question.
No. So it's 3.4. So I'm just getting a mover and a seconder, and then discussion as usual. Questions of Donna or Rob? I'm not sure who's there.
Yeah, we're both here.
Both here.
Right.
Can I just, it's Martin here, can I just ask a question? And
Yes.
people might be rolling their eyes virtually as I do. On that first page, which is page 550, down at the, we've got surplus deficit after tax and operating surplus deficit. And could I just have that explained? Because we've got surplus deficit of 4086, and then we've got operating surplus deficit minus 7192. Could I just have someone explain that?
Yes, it's Donna here. I can talk to that.
Thank you.
So what it is the way that the statements are prepared according to general accounting standards. And in general accounting standards, in your income statement, which is what this is, you also have to report a revenue that isn't actually operating revenue. An example of that is if you look up a little lines a bit under revenue, you'll see development and financial contributions of 2.4 million. So that there, they only can go towards capital projects. They don't fund operating expenditure. So basically it's not the revenue, that revenue doesn't offset the expenditure below. And there's also in that subsidies and grants, there's also a fair bit of that is exactly the same. So also in the other revenue, there's vested assets in there, which again is another example of revenue that's not operating revenue. So I've put in that operating surplus deficit there just so that the councillors can be a little bit more informed and understand the financial statements a bit better. And that shows your actual operating surplus deficit. So what that's showing is that our revenue or our expenditure, our operating expenditure we're predicting will be around about $7 million more than our revenue coming in.
Okay, and
does that explain it? Sorry, it's a bit confusing, I know, but it's just trying to give some clarity on the balanced budget situation.
Yep. So that's that's good. So that's basically taking that 2480 and 10 figure.
Some of that 10, and some of the other. There's other. There's mixtures.
And that figure is as at the end of March, or that's the prediction at the end of year?
Yes, that's the assumption based on what the organisation is telling us for the end of year.
Right. Thank you.
I mean, we've taken, like we did when we came to you on the 21st of April with the two scenarios. We had the scenario one, which was if we'd been in lockdown for 4 weeks, and then we had the other scenario if it was 8 weeks. So when we had a bit of a debate as management around what's it going to look like now, mostly for the operational side, that scenario 2 we think is the more conservative side, and it's a more conservative option to adopt in this instant. I mean, it would be great that we may get more revenue in than that, and if we do, that will offset that operating deficit at the bottom when we actually get our year-end results in.
Okay.
Thank you, Martin. Murray, you had a question?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. When we go through to capital expenditure, we've got Hauraki Rail Trail extension, 15 mil. Was that a loan or was that actual expenditure? I thought that was a loan we were underwriting.
Yeah.
Page 552.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know the details of that on hand at the moment. Does anybody else, any of the others online, know anything about Murray's
I know,
question?
well, I remember a lot of discussion, and I think I might have been moved to a seconder. We approved that as a loan to them because we were told it wouldn't, if we were underwriting it, that money, it would come back. So I just look at it as expenditure. I'm sure it's that money.
I can answer that.
Yeah.
Yes, I believe that's the extension that we're talking about from the rail trail into town for Thames. So that's a local project,
okay.
Bringing it into Thames.
So it wasn't that other piece, Bruce?
No.
No. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Are
you.
there any other questions?
Yes.
Yeah, I've got one or two others. I
Okay.
presume
Murray, then Robin, then Gary.
And
I presume these are done. These revisions were done in cooperation with the area managers for each area. My concern, and I'm only asking concern, some of the projects. Look, I look at I think the ceiling out at Ha and the car park there was in for a couple of hundred. It's down to now to 99. It will be done in that price of just a price revision, Bruce.
Yeah, so what these numbers are based on is based on the discussions with the project team. So Andrew Bowden and his project managers, and so it's really a lot of it's not about what they want to do or don't want to do. It's really about what they physically can get done based on the lockdown that we've been in. And
yeah,
so
I understand that.
Yeah, so it's what we are going to be doing is we're going to be looking at obviously we've had a lot of feedback as part of the annual plan around the capital program for next year. And we're going to have a number of projects this year that we couldn't get done, but that we do need to actually do. And then there'll be a lot of projects that we didn't get done that we probably don't have to do. So there's going to be a real mix of stuff from this year that might need to carry on next year. And we're going to have to be re-looking at the capital program next year to look at what we do or what we don't do based on this pandemic that we've been through. So there's a number of discussions that will have to go on. And I'd anticipate a lot of that will happen at the deliberations.
So the next question that follows on from that, of course, and I totally understand that, Bruce, the next question follows on to Rob. In view of Rob's not wanting to carry over anything last year, what is the attitude going to be to carrying things over this year in view of that 2 months capital works and all the rest of it hasn't been done during the lockdown?
Well, I think as Bruce said, we'll have to discuss that during deliberations, won't we?
Yes, absolutely. My view on that is we need to make every opportunity we can to reduce the level of capital program going forwards and also reduce the amount of capital that we spend this year so it has a good impact, a positive impact on our proposed rates increase this year that we're obviously about to go into deliberations to consider.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Murray?
Not really, but I realise it's a flexible game at the moment, and so long as we've got flexible minds, then I take it it's a flexible game, and you've got to look. None of us know, so I accept that.
Look, Tony's been waiting for a while, so I'm now going to take Tony. Then it was Robin, and then it was Gary. So Terry, you'll have to be after that. So Tony is next.
Terry can be me. I'm not.
Tony, Robin, Gary, Terry.
No, Gary doesn't need to be heard.
Oh, right. Sorry, Gary. Tony.
My question is in relation to the reforecast for capital expenditure. Do we have any indication on what that might do to the rate? And if that carries forward, then say into the LTP, anyone got any comment on that?
I can comment on that. I mean, there's a lot of different levers we can pull, and I'd like a discussion with the elected team at some point. But in terms of the capital program, we budgeted for 34 million. We're probably going to deliver something around 30 million, which would reduce the potential rates going forward by 1%. There's a number of other things going on that would be a bit too sort of complex to get into at this point in time, but I think it's very worthy of a discussion before we go into deliberations.
Okay, thank you.
Right now, Robin.
It was not me who said I needed to speak, Sandra. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Then it's Terry that's next.
And again, it wasn't me, but I did hear the facts from Rob there, and he satisfied my question. Thank you.
Oh, well, is there anyone left? Okay. Any more questions of Rob or Bruce or Donna? There being none, then I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Against? Carried. So we're now on to 3.5, financial relief for year-end rates penalties. So do I have a mover for that?
I'd like to move that, Martin.
Martin, good on you. Seconder?
John.
John. Is there any discussion? There be none, then I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Carried. Right, we're now to the Economic Development and Communications 4.1, the Whangamata Information Centre. Do I have a mover?
Yeah, I'll move this way.
Terry, do I have a seconder?
John.
John, thank you. Any discussion?
Sorry, I was on mute. I seconded it, but I thought I didn't realise it's Gary here. I probably better I do second.
John, you okay if we take Gary as a seconder?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Because the muting and unmuting we have to be a bit cognizant of. So thank you very much for that, John. Right, so moved Terry, seconded Gary. Is there any discussion around this?
Yeah, I'd just like a quick discussion. Oh,
Terry, then Robin.
Yeah, we've this has been a situation that's been quite stressful for the community, and this group stood up. They've got aspirational opportunities here, which we'll be interested to see if it forms that we hope the best for them. And I just think that we'll see what happens down the line, especially in this current format. But we just hope that this will work going forward. They think they've got the plan. Well, let's see what happens. But we wish them the best.
Thanks, Terry. Robin?
Yeah, I'm not too sure if anybody here can comment on exactly, but when I was reading through the quite impressive proposal, and I was very pleased to see that there was a group that had a lot of passion and experience to step up and do this. There was a line somewhere towards the end of their report, their proposal, that said that they'd be looking to help other organisations with grant proposals, and I just wondered if that was already a duplication of services offered by the Community Services Trust in Whangamata, and whether that was something that an information centre would naturally be a fit for. And so it was just something that sort of popped into my mind as, wouldn't be the first place I would go if I needed assistance with that sort of thing and I lived in Whangamata. So I just wondered if anybody would like to comment on that.
I'd imagine, Terry, but I imagine it's up to the Whangamata Garden Club and what their skills or expertise that they've got to offer. So it's I don't see it as a negative.
I just talked to it. I hear what you're saying, Robin. I think this new group, the multi-sport group, their budgets are quite aspirational, and I just don't know if they will actually form into being the future, but we'll see. But they really are reliant on the grant that's coming from TCDC, and they're an information provider. So how much extra work they can do in terms of helping other communities will be something we'll have to find out going forward.
I mean, I think anybody who can help community groups flourish is a fantastic thing. I will put that out there.
Yeah. Sorry, I got the wrong name, but okay, right. So it looks like everybody's comfortable with that. So
I've got a comment still.
Tony?
I'm in the chat box. So.
Oh,
sorry. I saw that.
Who's ready to go? My question.
Murray. Yeah.
My question is more of a comment, and more for perhaps for the long-term plan. But I think we need to go and have a look at information centres, full stop, and how they're funded. And I'm of a view they should be funded by the people that benefit and not by ratepayers. So anyhow, I'll leave that as my thoughts until we get to further discussions, but I think it's time to have a good look at how info centres are funded.
I agree totally. Absolutely. It should be a locally funded.
Martin?
Yeah, my query was there didn't seem to be any financials in here. Is that normal for that expression of interest that gets worked out later?
We were provided the community board with the financials budget that they had, which I suppose, yeah, without seeing it, it is aspirational, and I would wonder if they'd ever achieve it. But they've put it forward, so I don't know why you never got it, but we certainly got a budget supplied.
Okay, I was just sort of thinking because there was the issue last year, wasn't there, about additional funding sought?
Correct, and this group that's going together, which is really a husband and wife and daughter action group, is going to try and survive, and they will have to generate money to survive. But remembering that it's an information centre providing information, or in most cases free to the public. So how that is going to work will be interesting. We'll see.
Mayor Sandra, it's Yvonne. May I speak to that?
Yes, Yvonne.
Yes, when we prepared the report, there was a comprehensive financial plan there, which we shared with the community board to receive comment back before we finalised the report. But as it was commercially sensitive, we kept it out of the final report.
Thank you, appreciate that. My only query was whether there was any change as a result of the lockdown. So I'm presuming that the agreements reached and the discussion is not overly influenced by the lockdown, except that they may not have the revenue from the door traffic that they might have otherwise. So I don't know if that affects their operation.
I can talk
So it was just
that they're
Sorry?
well aware of they're well aware of the situation post COVID. They're well aware that the level of service and is what council will be paying, and anything above and beyond that they will have to look at themselves.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much indeed, everybody.
I just want to have a final comment, and that's along the lines that Tony Fox says that we really want this thing to continue to work. So moving funding from district to local will allow us the resource to be able to support this operation if it starts to have difficulties. So I support looking at localisation of information centres.
Thank you, Terry. So that's a discussion for another time. So I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Against? Anyone against? There being none of those, the motion is passed. The resolution is passed. So we're now on to 4.2, which is endorsement of the TCDC Thames and Surround Spatial Plan Establishment Report. Do I have a mover?
Yes, it's Robin.
Thank you, Robin. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, me.
Oh, Sandra.
Sally.
Oh, Sally.
Sorry.
I thought Martin was
Robin,
going to do
second Sally. Are there any questions in regard to this report?
Yeah, I've got a question.
Yes, Terry.
Great idea, fantastic. I think it's we've all got to be doing these structured plans and we want to see growth. I just wonder in the climate, and has the local community been engaged enough to warrant the spending going forward?
This is about doing a spatial plan, Terry.
Yes, they're costing the spatial plan, and yeah. So is that locally funded or district funded, Sandra?
District funded. It's district funded.
It'd be district funded, I would imagine, because it's planning.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah. So Martin here, the thing about this that caught my eye was the bit right down towards the bottom, which talked about the pathway, and I'm just ad-libbing while I get down to the bottom of it. But I like the fact that, yeah, towards the bottom there was the idea of making changes to the I'm running out of ad libbing here. Making changes to the district plan as a result of this, because obviously over the last few years, and I was involved with the initial one, the urban design thing back in 2009 or 10 or whenever that was. I think the public has just seen a number of these type projects and reports be done, and then they just sort of seem to gather a bit of dust. So I really think we need to push this to actually start to make some stuff happen.
I totally agree, Martin, and we need to do this for a number of reasons. One, we've got the oldest housing stock in Thames in the district, which is 53 years, compared to over at Whitianga, which I understand is about 35. And so not only that, but Thames is chronically short of houses, and we need to find another area for housing development for potential adaptation purposes where we incrementally can move from the coast. So this actually has to happen. I'm hopeful that we can just regurgitate all the work that Boffa-Miskell have already done, and all those documents are sitting on my desk, because largely not a lot has changed since all those reports were done for the Kopu structure plan, except that we're looking further afield. And can I say that in working with Hauraki District Council, we look to, at some point in the future, no doubt, be holding hands with them potentially as they start to do the same thing along that hill country. So basically going to higher ground. This is absolutely essential. So I totally support this going forward. Are there any other comments or questions in regard to this?
I just comment the fact that Dennis Tegg was quite against this, any kind of development work through Thames along there. Is he going to be an issue in terms of going forward with taking steps to block this?
Well, I think that's the importance of the spatial plan, isn't it? So that we're not just looking at the coastal land, but all of our land, and those issues will need to be addressed. And I think that, our relationship with regional council will be crucial in all of this. And there will be issues around certain land to the south of us, but this is pulling it all together, and also the hills between here and Hikataya, which is going to make the biggest difference.
Thank you, Sally.
Sorry, the only other comment I'd make is that I've heard mutterings. We've got quite a few friends and family up in Auckland, and I've heard mutterings in a post-COVID world of big cities being less attractive for people, especially people who are raising children who've had to do lockdown with genuine fear of going outside. And so I think that now's a really good time to look at what we have to offer families who want to leave bigger cities and come and have a better lifestyle down here. So this is why I support this. I think it's a good time to do it.
Okay, now I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. So we now go on to 5.1, Chief Executive Report.
Thank you, Your Worship. We're here with the team to answer questions. I think a lot of the questions may have been covered when we went through the budget review process, the budget review revision report, but yes, happy to take questions and
Rob,
provide clarifications.
It's Gary here, Rob. I just find those sort of graph things user unfriendly. I do struggle with them, I have to say.
All right, so what's your question, Gary?
Well, I'm just struggling to follow it as well as I should. I'm really, the terms and things just confuse me a bit.
So do you have any actual questions around the financials?
Well, I think they're probably all right, but I just have struggled to follow them, that's all.
Okay, so perhaps post this meeting, if you have a sit down with Robin and talk to him about how that could be improved for us all.
I'll come to that.
Do you prefer the tables, Gary, like we showed in the budget revision? Would you prefer to see a table like that?
Possibly. I don't know what the councillors think.
Yes,
Okay,
Rob.
so-
Yes.
It's Martin here. I mean, I know as Thames councillors had a talk to, I was trying to remember if it was Rob and Carl or just Carl shortly after we were elected, just around the favourable, unfavourable what way that this is presented. And yeah, just sort of trying really to understand you know, how this might compare to previous years, you know, whether things were on track or not. And yeah, I still have to admit to actually really struggling with understanding this. I don't think I could show this to someone else and say, yes, everything's okay. And I think some MP a few years ago said that, well, unless he could, you know, show it to his 15-year-old child and they would understand it, then what's the point in having it?
Yep.
So the questions that you had before, Martin, of Donna around the budget revision papers, and that's reflected in these graphs or these favourable and unfavourables. Would you prefer to have the same structure that Donna had in the budget revision paper rather than this unfavourable, favourable format?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to have, you know, completely reinvent the wheel, and I realise that the finance system that the finance system that we've got, Carl explained, it does have some limitations as to what it can pull out, but yeah, and I think I'm not alone amongst councillors, and yeah, just sort of struggling with the way these are presented.
Yeah, look,
okay, so
Martin, you're raising something that I've raised myself in terms of, I don't know if it's necessarily the presentation as more possibly the commentary that goes with the presentation.
Absolutely.
So, for example, in those first few pages, it would be far more helpful to have a far more detailed commentary. So, as an initial reaction to this particular report, that summary paragraph there wasn't there on the original report, which I included just to provide the assurance that what we said we were going to achieve, we are actually sort of heading towards what we said we were going to achieve. And I think it's sort of providing a bit more clarity throughout the report in terms of some commentary. I think I'm hearing you in that regard, because I think I feel the same way at times.
Yeah, and I mean, if one looked at that capital expenditure graph at the bottom of page 609, with the top red line being reforecast, annual plan, OOCs and carry forwards, but the year-to-date actual being sort of only just above 20 million, you could look at that and go, oh, wow, okay, we're way under. But, yeah, I do just sort of struggle with that. Sorry to hog the discussion.
No, I think it's
all right. It's important. It's important.
Yeah.
Through your worship, I'm happy at some point to sit down with the councillors and or management or whoever, and we can talk further about these reports, and we can produce any way you like that makes it easier for you to understand. There is no really limitation on what we can do, so it's just a matter of getting this feedback, which is great, to actually know what you would like to see.
Yeah.
Okay, so what might be helpful is perhaps a range of format samples that might work. So we will talk about that between now and our next meeting, so that we can think of how we might present that and give the councillors some consideration.
Can I just ask Rob a question?
Go for it.
I realise this is basically around the finances. I'm just interested in like a very brief state of the nation about how is the organisation coming through COVID. We're moving to level 2 on Thursday. What does that mean? Just getting a sense of where we're at and how our people are, etc.
Yeah, look, I think the organisation's doing okay. We've done remarkably well through the lockdown period. We did some extensive work probably 12 months ago on our business continuity planning. It was something that I instigated with all of our staff, was to make sure that we had good business continuity plans. I certainly wasn't thinking of a pandemic when I did that, but I was conscious that our business continuity planning was in an appalling state, so we needed to ramp it up. So I was pleased that we did that work 12 months ago because it put us in good stead. We've been working with a lot of people over that last 12-month period to work from home, so that we were, from a lifestyle balance perspective, allowing people to work from home, not realizing that a pandemic would come along and really test whether that could work or not. So we basically had 85%, would be my guess, of our organisation being fully productive at home doing their work. So that's been a significant achievement. In terms of their mental state, we've been conducting some staff surveys throughout the period. We've just started the second deep dive of the period today. So staff are being asked some particular questions in relation to how they're feeling and what improvements they could suggest. So the feedback that we've been getting has both been highly engaged and also reasonably positive. So yeah, look, we're not doing too bad. The leadership team, I've been talking with the team over the last week or so to suggest that we don't just want everybody to return back to the office when everything sort of finishes, because I don't want to return immediately and just go back to this is the way we've always done it. So I've tasked the leadership team with looking at the way we have survived or coped or even done really well under lockdown, make sure that we take those lessons on board, because if we can reduce the amount of office space by even 10 or 15%, because we can successfully have people staying engaged with their work and actually doing good work, create a life-work balance by offering the option for people to work from home, then we could then we may have some space available in our offices, or even be able to rationalise our office spaces. So look, we're trying to learn our lessons as well coming out of COVID. So I think it's been a really despite the real negative experience that it's had, it's also provided some positive opportunities for gathering data.
Martin.
Yeah, I just wanted to check with Rob about that. I can't remember the name of the scheme, where staff can ring up and get counselling. I just wondered if you've had a feeling for what the take-up of that has been like.
Look, I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, that's right.
I haven't been informed of any major take-up.
Okay.
Sorry, did you say something?
Yeah, no, I should have pre-warned you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, that's okay. No, that's all right. Look, Emma, our People and Capability Manager hasn't suggested that there's been any major take-up. It's certainly been there for people to take up if they need to.
Okay.
Terry.
Yes, Rob, thanks. Around your report, I see under the operational deficit it was 6.6 million in 2019, and now it's 7.2. That was using the second scenario, I understand.
Yes. Yeah, the 7.2 million primarily relates to the loss of revenue that we've experienced. So we're predicting in that scenario too a loss of revenue of about 2.5 million. So our expenditure is probably down $1 million because of the COVID situation, but our loss of revenue has overtaken that in terms of that balance. But again, as Donna pointed out earlier on in this meeting, that is a very conservative estimate. So we're hoping that 7.1 million is a worst case scenario estimate.
Right. And the other one I noticed is the total
and what we've got to
sorry.
Yeah. What we've also got to realise is that in December, when we sort of ran our first workshop on the annual plan discussion, we were looking at probably $10 or $11 million worth of deficit. So over Christmas, we went through and trimmed out $4 million worth of expenditure, and it looks as though we're getting through. I think you might remember the risk management report that we put forward to say we've trimmed out $4 million. We may end up having to spend some of this money. touching wood at the moment as I say this, but we're optimistic that we are still getting getting a good result in terms of not needing to go there. So that $6 million of over expenditure is the worst case scenario that seems to be panning out. Okay, thank you. And there's a couple more quick ones. The total borrowing I got at 66.7 internally and 59.202 external borrowing. It comes to 125 million, but for total borrowing, but we've got 129.24 million in your report. I just wondered, is there some differential there that I don't understand? I think Donna would probably have an answer for that.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it. Sorry, Terry, just give me a second.
And just while you're thinking about that one, the last one I got is just the consultants versus internal employees. Building control costs were 300,000 above budget. Is that because of the new Alpha 1 program and more, or is it just because of the increase of consents that was going at the time?
Yeah, no, that's a workload issue. Just that we physically can't employ enough building staff to do work that was required to be done. So that physical not being able to employ staff is a mix of workload, but also just not being able to attract staff to our district. Okay, thank you.
That's been an issue for a long time, not being able to attract staff. Are there any other questions of Rob?
Yeah, Murray here. Sandra, just a thing that I'd like to put down for later on. I see capital and operating expenditure for roading is at the moment, to end of March, is about 21 mil round figures. It's about a third of our rates. I'd like to see at a workshop, not today, but a workshop coming in a breakdown of what we spend actually putting metal on the roads, what we actually spend on staff in the roading department, what we actually spend on consultants in the roading department, a full breakdown of that department for us as elected members, because as I say,
I understand those workshops have already been scheduled.
Okay, thank you.
That's correct, isn't it, Rob?
Yes, absolutely.
It's been scheduled. Yep. I didn't realise that. Thank you.
Yeah, because we raised that before the COVID thing came up, that we wanted to go through the infrastructure, all of the infrastructure, yep. And that's yep. Where we had that conversation about the whole of council right. Being party to that rather than just a few of us.
That's right. Thank you.
Can I just comment?
Sally?
I'm really happy to attend as many workshops as are necessary so we can make really good decisions going forward and be well prepared for the long-term plan. So I will double my workload happily if that's going to, because often we say we're going to have a workshop on X, Y, and Z, and then suddenly months go by. And so to me, there is a huge amount to be done, and let's do it.
Yeah, and that was that discussion we had before lockdown, where we were going to have to do a complete in-depth look at all of our infrastructure in regard to the LTP and really nail all of that down, because we have to make some pretty hard decisions around all of that.
Yeah.
And everybody wanted it, so that's good. Thank you, Sally.
But just on a high level, Sandra, I'm looking at some consultants' information that I've got coming through, and in particular into the roading area, and I look at the road surfacing programs that we have. Basically, I'm looking at a 99.7% ratio of contractors physically doing work on the roads to do surfacing work, versus a 0.3% of staff time with 0 consultants. I'm looking at some of the construction contracts that we have, which is the sort of the more capital type of work, where we've got a 93% percentage ratio of contractors doing the work versus a 6% of consultants and a less than 1% of staff. So, you know, in terms of physically doing work, we've got the vast majority of our contractors doing the actual work versus consultants doing work for them. So where we do have significant consultant costs, and I haven't got all the figures yet because we're sort of working really hard to try and drag out all of the consultant costs that we have in the organisation. We have to remember that it was probably in the early 90s, way before my time here and way before a lot of us were here, that we decided to externalize our professional services within this organisation. So we probably have upwards of $1.5 to $2 million worth of consultant costs that are filling the positions that most local authorities would be internal staff. And that's such as the Pinnacles contract and the Opus contract before that is where the consultant costs do go up compared to other local authorities. That's because we decided back then to externalise the resource. So again, that might be something that we look at during the LTP process. It certainly will be considered as we go through these detailed infrastructure workshops as to whether we conduct a Section 17A review to decide whether we want to re-internalise our professional services units. Because without the ability to have a depth of structure to professional services within an organisation, it then creates the added difficulty of being able to employ quality staff in those areas because they don't foresee the opportunity to actually manage staff or learn the trade.
Very good explanation. Thank you very much. Any other questions of Rob? There being none, then I'm happy to move the resolution. Do I have a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Terry, second that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Right, so we're now on to 5.2 members' reports. So if I start from my right, I'll go to Robin first.
I actually don't have anything specific that I wanted to talk about today.
Thank you, Robin. Martin?
Okay, so I've got a few bits and pieces. So I've attended a few webinars in the last few weeks. There's been some particularly good ones. Attended a Creative New Zealand one. Also one on NZTA put on around urban mobility for livable towns and cities. The takeout that I got from the NZTA one is that they are really up for listening to areas that have got ideas and want to get stuff done. So that felt really positive. I was part of the Thames-Coromandel group that did the grant allocations. That was several hours one Friday morning, one weekday morning. That was great, handing out those grants. The other thing, and I think it's been raised by this couple of the new councillors before, was just around the idea of tracking ideas, particularly ones that we're getting from public forums, and how the elected members can sort of check if they've been followed up, and also responding back to the submitters. I know we've had some quite good ideas and in the public forums in the last few months, but yeah, I just sort of worry that they sort of disappear. It may well be that staff are taking them away and working on them, but it seems and I know other councillors don't want to sort of keep bugging staff about it. So we were wondering if there's a way that those can be tracked, just so that obviously we don't have to look at all of them. Some of them are a bit wacky, but the particular one I was thinking about was when Alan Young from the Goldmine Experience had the suggestion around the 70k zone at the northern end of Thames. And yeah, just sort of also going on from what the NZTA webinar, they're keen to be looking at projects and little things like that to make areas more livable. Sorry, Sandra.
I mean, those sort of things you traverse with your community board and make a recommendation to council, Martin.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously green enough that green as in not knowing things, not green as in my politics, to not really know how those things should get followed up. But I'm aware that we're getting
to guide you.
Yeah, we're getting people along in the public forums, and to my mind, that sort of thing is gold. And if we follow up a few people, we don't have to say yes to all of them, but we can follow it up saying, look, it's been looked into and we can't do it for this reason, those people then tell another dozen people, and before you know it, we're starting to get a bit more of a reputation around the place about how we're listening to people. So I think that's something that we really need to look at quite closely. And the very last thing was just around community groups that are now that are using council or have got leases on council owned buildings. I think they're just starting to get charged the insurance for those. Am I correct in saying that?
I have no idea.
Yes, that is correct. The
Right.
insurance, yeah, they're just in the process of getting those invoices out now.
Yes. So, I mean, obviously, this is something that they haven't had to pay in the past, and they're now having to. I just wondered if other people had thoughts about that, and also noticing that Hauraki District Council offering a rent or lease rebate for the next period. I don't know if that's something we could look into, but obviously it's going to cost some money, Sandra. But that's just my thought about those community groups who probably need support right now. And that's all.
Thank you, Martin. Okay, Terry.
Yep, just unmuting, excuse me. Yeah, okay, well, I've had to sit down for the last month and eat a lot of home cooking and thinking about life. So I've just got a few words here I'd like to read out about how I think we are now and going forward. So as we emerge from the COVID-19, getting the right balance between supporting those in need, stimulating the local economy while not overburdening ratepayers in the future is the way I think we should go forward. We have listened to the ratepayers' views, concerns and fears on the proposed draft annual plan. We now need to drill down and review before we reboot how we do business in order to get better management costs and reduce debt going forward. We can't continue on this path with the current capital projects budget.
Hey, Terry,
Yep.
I'm sorry, but this is about reporting back on. This is not a. I mean, how long is this statement going to be?
Another 3-4 lines. That's all. It's just my reflection over the last month, which we haven't doing a lot of budget council work. So I just think we need to reduce this down towards the depreciation budget around $28-30 million to be more attainable. So we don't have the rollover, the retained earnings and the continual loans. A full review of the business and project costs that may be deferred or removed to allow a more conservative rate rise than 9.8. Have consideration and understanding on the economic impact on business and ratepayers as they restart the economy, and review the use of external contractors and consultants while stimulating business activity. That's my statement, and that's how I feel about this where we are at the moment. It's an opportunity for us to relook at our whole business, what we're going to do and how we're going to do it going forward. Thank you.
And that's something that everybody's been reiterating and talking about, Terry. So I think we're all on that same space.
We hear their views too.
John.
We've had a few things up here lately, pretty positive things. The fact that Spark brought in a temporary cell phone tower to give us coverage during lockdown because we were unable to cope with the connectivity. That was a positive thing at the end of the day and got a lot of public support and just gave us an insight into how a lot of people around town feel about cell phone towers. I ran a little sort of a poll almost on Facebook and over 200 comments and what have you, and all but one was positive. So it was a bit of an eye-opener that. The other thing is we've been approached to consider a bylaw regarding gin traps being on the ground. We had an incident where a Kiwi was caught in one recently, so we're in the process of perhaps bringing the bylaw back to council regarding the use of gin traps on the ground. I actually thought they were illegal, but they're not. And and I've had a fair bit of lobbying regarding the item that's coming up shortly in public excluded, both sides of that coin, and that's been quite enlightening. But overall quite positive. So yeah, it's been quite busy considering we're in lockdown. There's been a lot of council stuff happening up here in Coromandel.
Thanks, John. And can I say that you and Peter Pritchard handled the temporary cell phone tower issue fantastically. I think that there's huge support for that. So very well done to you and to Peter as well. So thank you. Gary.
Yes, well, I ended up down at Whangamata, and I had a lot of, and I put internet on down there because with Nigel Boot, which was pretty amazing, and I've got it permanently, which makes life so much more easy. But I spent a lot of time reflecting because I had more time and I couldn't damn well swim. But but the end result was that I asked a number of questions about consultants and other things, and Don has kindly answered many of them, and more answers to come, and that's given me time to reflect on matters. The thing that impressed me was the huge amount of submissions we had on the annual plan, and listening to those ones who gave me more time to reflect on things in a way that maybe I would have been more rushed. But I have to say that our ratepayers gave some amazing submissions, and I'm very grateful for what they did. And as Terry raised, we've had a huge amount of paperwork, the 500 and something pages on the submissions and the 700 and something on here. And I was concerned. And at this stage, I didn't know anything about some aspects I was going to look into. But Stephen Hunt came back and said, look, there's lots of paperwork, but you've got actual reports and you can sort of rely on them. And the third example was the indoor alert device. And I read it all, and that's when I saw the anomaly, which I've mentioned before, which does cause concern because we're relying on sort of précis of what's there. We need to be confident that is the case. And I decided the example, which I felt quite concerned about because it wasn't accurate. And I just need to have accurate summaries reports for us. If they're not correct, we put ourselves into jeopardy. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. And yeah, the reading all the pages, I'm sorry, but that goes with the territory. That's part of the job. So to everybody, thank you for your forbearance and reading all of those papers. It's been really important. And for you picking up the anomaly, Gary, that's something that I'm sure you've raised that as a question, and they'll be looking at that and any other questions that people have following the meeting in regard to those reports. So, Tony.
Righto. I just sent my brief notes from the Regional Transport Committee meeting out to everyone, which I'm assuming everyone got. The key points out of that really were that going forward there will be members' reports where they dropped off, and there will be action plans, and the items we raised on the one-lane bridges, etc., I am expecting will populate that first report. I raise issues in terms of the Matarangi water supply and reservoir. I understand that there are some significant issues there, and the cost to fix up the problem that exists could be significant, and it might mean shifting the reservoir altogether. So I think that needs to be on an audit and risk register, and I am very keen to find out officially and formally where we are with that. I'm also keen to get an update on the water in Mercury Bay, because that happened a long time ago, and I recall being told I'd have a report in 6 weeks, and now 12 weeks has gone by and I'm still no more the wiser. So
what was that report for, Tony?
We were going to be given a report 6 weeks after we had the water restrictions to tell us where we were at in terms of the water supply, in terms of its flow, what's going on, and what were some of the options. And indeed, I've offered and put in what some of the options are, and as well as that, I've listed a group of people who have some historical information which might be able to help. But that has been deathly quiet for me sitting here. My last one's a comment in terms of waste and blue bags. I think we need to turn this around and stop talking about the cost of a blue bag. So someone says, oh God, the cost has gone up to $3.70. The cost of the blue bag it hasn't gone up at all. It's the cost of getting rid of it. So I think when we start talking about stuff in the media, talk about what the real issue is. The plastic bag's worth about 0.5 cent. The cost to pick it up is $5. So we need to do that. So when people go out and say, "Oh God, it's cost me $5 for a blue bag," yes, it has. That's for you to take it home, fill it up, and someone to come and pick it up and take it to the dump, and then pick it up again and take it to the landfill. So I would be starting to put a more positive note on that with waste, because clearly out of the annual plan submissions, there were plenty of comment about the cost of waste and how those things work. I might add, from a personal thing, I, for the first time, got out of my house the other day to dump a few bins of bottles, and the dump at Woodianga was actually looking remarkably clean. In fact, I was the only person there apart from the staff. So that's it from me.
Okay. Oh, excellent. Thank you, Tony. Sally.
Bruce
I
has
just
a
want to-
comment on the total
Oh,
supply.
Bruce, sorry,
Yes.
Bruce has a comment. Sorry, Sally.
That's fine.
Yeah, excuse me. With Tony's comment about the Whitianga water, so apologies, that's my error. I did get some information through from my team, came into my inbox as we were going into the lockdown with COVID, and I haven't reviewed that to get that back out to Councillor Fox. So that one sits with me, and it was around the flows and the volumes in Whitianga. And the other thing I'd say is the comments Councillor Fox made about the blue bags is a good comment, and I think it's around how we message that it's not the price of the actual bag, it's the price of the disposal. So and finally, glad to hear that the Whitianga transfer station is fit for one person at a time. That sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bruce.
What I would also add to that, what I'd also add to that, Bruce, and you might provide more detail, I don't know where it's got to, is the Matarangi reservoir issue. Yes, there is a significant issue that we have Tonkin and Taylor looking into at the moment, but I've been given the reassurance that even if we have to decommission that reservoir, it's not critical to the Matarangi water supply in the medium term.
Yes, that's correct, Rob.
Tell me if I'm wrong, Bruce.
No, that's correct. A really brief update on that one is, yes, there are some subsidence on some fill around the edge of the reservoir platform up on the bluff reservoirs in Matarangi. We do have Tonkin and Taylor doing an investigation into that, a geotechnical investigation. There's going to be a range of options there, ranging from, shoring up that site and building big retaining walls, maybe moving those reservoirs, changing the configuration, or possibly looking at not having high-level reservoirs. And as Rob mentioned, we've got a large low-level reservoir that's situated right next to the water treatment plant in Matarangi, and we can supply Matarangi direct off that low-level reservoir with a booster pump into town. We don't actually need to go up to the high-level reservoirs. So there's a range of options, and until we get that information, we don't quite know where we're going to be going with that one. But I suppose the key message is we've got it in hand and we're working through it. It's going to take a little bit of time, but we've got it in hand.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, Sally.
I just wanted to acknowledge the organisation's response to COVID-19. The core emergency management team and the vast number of other TCDC employees that assisted with that process, as well as their ordinary work. And the key to have good regional relationships in terms of the triangle Matamata Piako, Hauraki and us working together over that period to provide the welfare, etc., that was necessary. So just wanting to acknowledge that. And also the only other thing I wanted to say was how much I enjoyed the submission process, and how I think that the online option has huge advantage. As I'm not saying it's not the magic bullet, but I think that we should include that as an option instead of people having to travel so far to chamber that we're very used to sitting in, but for other people they find quite nerve-wracking. So thanks to all the staff that made that happen too.
Thank you, Sally. Murray.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, the first 3 weeks of lockup, I enjoyed this. I'm finding quite frustrating. Couple of things. I noticed Rob mentioned in his report yesterday about the plastics and the only types of plastics. I haven't seen any sort of education campaign yet. I don't know whether I've missed it, but I thought we were going to do that and get that in place some time ago, so people knew what sort of plastics to pick up. The second thing is just for the economic development team, talking to the couriers. Some of you may know that all the courier posts are delivered out of our building in Pyro. The demand for courier and the online buying and the changes in people's buying habits has been substantial, and you know, they're experiencing all-time highs on delivering packages. And I think the substantial change it's going to affect our small towns. So just something I think we need to keep in mind, that buying online is going to change our buying habits, and certainly the courier companies think after the time we've been in lockdown, it's going to change. That's all I want to report.
Can I talk to the campaign, Sandra? The curbside campaign for plastic.
Sorry, Lorna. Yeah.
Yes, it's Lorna. So I just wanted to say that we had to wait until we were aware of when lockdown 2 was going to be established, and then it was about when the Kopu facility was able to sort plastics and other products. So the campaign actually started yesterday. Ms. Sandra, you yourself was talking about it on the radio. We've got radio rolled out, and it is launching. So people are aware of it. We have had feedback so far, and yeah, we will be doing a big push. And remembering that that education campaign is the month of education before there is any, you know, where they won't collect.
Okay.
Okay. So look, thank you, Lorna. So my first shout out is to our Civil Defence Emergency Management team headed by Gary Towler. You know, the staff have just been amazing over the lockdown period and working possibly even harder than ever. I know that it certainly took its toll on the first 2 or 3 weeks. By the end of the first 2 or 3 weeks, huge amount of pressure on people, and you could see it that there was they probably worked harder than they had for a long time, and you could see that burden of pressure on them. And so to Gary and his Civil Defence Emergency Management team, an awesome job. And to our council, to Rob, just like to thank you and Lorna and everybody else in the comms team and economic development, our enforcement guys, all those people working behind the scenes, either from home or 1 or 2 from council. But they've been doing an extraordinary amount of work, and you don't actually see it. But I was aware of it because I was working so closely with Gary and the Skyping between the 3 councils with the mayors and the CEs all on board with that as well. And I haven't been busier in all my years as being in public office as I was during those first 2 or 3 weeks. So awesome, huge collective effort on everybody's part, and as well as the councillors as too, because we've had communications as well. On the plastic one, yes, I was just going to add to that and just say that I'd been running that line today and yesterday, so that's been very, very good. And I don't think there's much more than I can add to that. I think that we are still in a new dynamic. The working from home will be an additional tool that we'll use. I think Robin is right to some extent about people rethinking where they live and work from. And I think we'll be the beneficiaries of that. There's still a lot of work to go forward. Looking forward to those infrastructure workshops, because I know that's one of the key things that you're all looking to do. A lot of discussion in there. So we'll leave it at that going forward. And so we'll just move that the members' reports be received. Do I have a seconder?
Seconded.
Seconded, Murray. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you, team. It's been good. It's quite a mission to get through all of that. Now, can I have a mover to go into public excluded, please?
John.
John, seconder.
Sally.
Sally got to the punch. It's almost like a quiz show. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye.